Good day. In this tutorial I'm going to explain how to construct a basic ellipse. I'm going to use TurboCAD for this explanation, and this will also help you to identify certain features in how to use basic TurboCAD construction methods. Okay, I'm going to start. I have already set up my page layout, and I have a guideline, a horizontal guideline and a vertical guideline. And on my far left I have a couple of labels and points that I'm going to use as I draw. Okay, normally you would not have this, but I like to use a predefined setup, and I like to have my labels and stuff ready to grab and to use within my drawing. Good, so we're going to start with this ellipse, and I'm going to start by creating a new layer onto my canvas, and therefore I'm going to go to this button that says layers and click on it once. As you can see, I've already determined quite a few layers or created them, and now I'm going to create a new layer, and this layer I want to call constructions. Good. Now construction lines are light lines, so I'm going to go and select a light gray color for the construction lines. I want the style to be just a light continuous line. The width of the line I want to have 0. All of my construction lines and line types I draw with a 0 width, except for final outlines, which will be a 0.5. Now these dimensions, I'm going to change that also to 0, and that means all my line widths except final solid outlines will be 0.5. So let me change this one, and this one will be 0.5 because my answer will be 0.5. Okay, so now I can go back to my drawing, and I just click. And when I click on this button or hover over it, you will see it gives me the layers option, and all that I need to do is go and now select my constructions layer. And there it is right at the bottom. So you can now hover your mouse over the box right next to the layers option, and that will be all the colors. So, and I'm going to make it now by layer because I have already defined my layers. And if you click on this one, you can say that the layers or lines must be set up according to what you have created in the layers option. Once you have done that, you can also go to the line types. You can override it or leave it by layer. And the line width can be overwritten here, but I'm going to leave it as it is. Okay, good. So now I've turned on my snaps, and here on the far right is my snap modes. I have selected the vertex, the middle point, the intersection, and I'm going to deselect the grid. The magnetic point I leave on because that shows me this little triangle as I am drawing, and as I reach either a vertex or end of a line or intersection or a middle point thing, this little pink diamond will appear on my screen. Good, so I want the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis of my ellipse, to have a total length of 160. So I'm going to press tab on my keyboard once, and at the bottom left you will see there is a radius, and I want to make the total length of the x-axis, that means the main axis of my ellipse, 160. It means that it will be a radius of 80, and I type in 80 and press enter. That now creates for me a circle with a radius of 80 and an overall diameter of 160. Now I'm going to use my arrow or selector tool, and I'm going to grab one of these dots that I've predefined, and that's why I like to create these predefined labels and numbers and dots. because now all I do is grab it and go and place it. If I zoom in, you will see there it's neatly placed the dot at the intersection because my snaps are active here on the right hand side. On this little button here at the top in the title bar, I have the zoom extents. If I click on it, it will enlarge the screen to whatever I am busy drawing, and that is present on my canvas. Now I want to also go and place a dot here on the far right of my ellipse, and as you can see, I like to zoom in and zoom out and make sure that it is perfectly selected and snapped to the lens that I've created. Good, the next step is to label those points, and so I'm going to grab my A here on the far left, zoom out, zoom back in, and this is where I want A to be. I will label the rest now, but that is my starting point, so I'm going to label that as A for the moment. Good. Now I want to get the height of my ellipse. So I have determined the X value of the length of my ellipse, which was 160 millimeters in total. Now I'm going to make the total height of my ellipse 80 millimeters. That means from the center point. Now let me just do this right away before we carry on. I'm going to go and place a dot here right in the center of my ellipse, and I'm going to go and call that O. Now I don't have a label created as O, so I can just grab this A, I can copy it here at the top, paste it immediately, and it plays for me a copy of A. And now once I've placed it in position, and please notice that I'm going to zoom in and out regularly, so I double click on the yellow dot that is there. The green little dot allows me to swivel the label to whichever angle I like, but if I double click on the yellow dot, then it will open a new window, and on here I will just go and label the center point O. Good. If we have multiple center points, we will make it O1, O2, and so on. But I like to keep my main center point O, and I zoom out to the extents. Now I have my center point. So if I want my ellipse to be a total height of 80 millimeters, I know from my previous explanation that I will have to measure now 40 millimeters from point O up on the y-axis and down on the y-axis. That will give me the total of 80 millimeters for the height of my ellipse, or some will refer to it as the thickness of the ellipse. So what I do is I'm going to use my circle tool here on the far left of my toolbar, select that, make sure that it's still on the constructions layer as you can see here, and then I'm going to zoom in properly into the center, make sure that that diamond appears there. It will appear green now because it's on the black dot. Snap to that point, and now I just grab and I'm going to press tab on my keyboard. I want the total height to be 80, therefore the radius must be 40. Good. Now I've placed for myself an construction line that will give me the extents of the height of my ellipse. So once again, I'm going to go and use the select tool of my mouse, and I'm going to go out, grab a dot, place it at the top, go back out, grab another dot. Now there are many other ways to do this, but I just like to do it this way. It's a bit quicker than recreating everything the whole time. So now I have those dots. So now I have a dot here, a dot there, a dot over here, and a dot at the bottom. This will give me the X values of my ellipse and also the Y values of my ellipse. Now I can go ahead, click and drag to select the circles that I just used to construct or measure in TurboCAD, and I press delete on the keyboard. Now I have these 4 distinctive dots on my screen. So I will now label the rest of my dots, and I'm going to go grab a B over here, place it near the dot, zoom out back and get the C, place it here, and notice I am going clockwise. Now you do not have to label clockwise, but it is like a good practice to label a drawing in a clockwise direction. It's like a gentleman's agreement, although you do not have to stick to that rule. Good, so now I have A, B, C, D. A and C being the X value of my ellipse, 160 millimeters, and B and D being the Y value of my ellipse, being 80 millimeters in total. Good, I'm going to zoom in now a little bit just to keep it up into my screen, and I'm going to this tool over here on the left of my toolbar, select the line tool. Now I have to allocate that line to a layer, and I want to use constructions layer. It says black now. I can either click here by layer, or I can go and select the light gray to draw the line that I want. So what I need to do as part of my construction for the ellipse is now start working in steps. Once I have the X and Y values of the ellipse, I can start with the construction steps. So therefore, step 1 will be to zoom in right to the center of point A and zoom back into the center of point B and draw that line, which is a straight construction line from point A to point B. The next step would be to take my compass. Now on TurboCAD we use a circle tool instead of a compass. I make sure it's still on the constructions layer. It says by layer here, so it will still be a light gray line, or I could just go and override that by clicking on the light gray anyways. Now the next step, step 2, is to go back to the center point of my ellipse and click on it once, and what I will do is drag it all the way to point A and make sure that it snaps to the center of point A and draw a nice big circle. Now I don't really need this whole big circle, but I am going to use part of it. Now I will go and zoom back into point B as my third step. Click on point B perfectly by snapping, and then go to the top end of the circle, construction circle that I've just drawn, and click on it. Now I have a circle from point B that stretches to the uppermost point of the large construction circle that I've drawn. Now this looks a little bit cluttered on my page, and in drawings we want to draw as professional and neat as possible. Therefore I'm going to do some housekeeping. Is what we call it at school. So I'm going to go and click here on this tool. We call it the split entities tool on the far left of your toolbar. There are many other options which we'll maybe discuss during the course of this drawing or other drawings, but we need the split entity tool for now. The reason for that is because we want to now declutter our page by erasing the excess lines, the lines that we do not need, but we will take care that we do not erase our construction lines that show us how we got to the answer of our drawing. It's the same as in maths. When you show your workings out, you do not erase your workings out. You leave that on your page so that your teacher can see exactly what you have done and how you've concluded your answer. The same happens with a drawing, a technical drawing for that matter. So now I'm going to just anywhere round about there click, and see there as a red little cross appeared where it will now cut off this construction circle. And then I also want to do it here at the bottom. Now notice that I have clicked over there and over here, and I did not snap to the exact point. The reason for this is because we want to show that this is a construction that we have been drawing, and if we were to snap right onto the point, it wouldn't be wrong, but it would not be clear to everybody that that is a construction line that we have drawn. Good, so now I'm going to go back to the selected tool at the top left, and I'm going to click on the part of the circle that I wanted to erase, and I'm going to then press delete on my keyboard, and now already I have a lot more professional view on my drawing. Okay, so I want to also do the same with this circle here. I'm going to go back to the split entity tool, select it, click on the circle once that I want to work with, and then again I'm going to cut off a part of that circle just past the y-axis on that side, and then also just past this diagonal line here, because we want to just show this part of the arc, and I'll explain why we do that just now. So I select the selected tool, click on the part of the circle that I want to delete, and press delete on the keyboard. Wonderful. Now I have step 1, the diagonal line, step 2, this big arc from the center of my circle, of my ellipse, and then from point B I have the radius from B to the y extent of the big arc, and I have carried over that distance now onto my diagonal line AB. Once we've done that, I'm going to again grab a dot, and I'm going to place it at the intersection right there. Now I have a intersection here at the top, and I can also just quickly place a dot down there to define that point, and I have a dot here on this intersection. Good, so I like to define my intersections because it is reference points that I might be using. Good, so now let's look at the labels. I've got A, B, C, D, I've got O, but now obviously E would be the next logical label to use. So I'm going to go and select E here. Then I'm going to go to this top layer or dot here at the top at that intersection. And then this one over here, I want to call it F. So let's go and grab F over here. And I'm placing F there. Please notice I don't put the label right onto the construction line or the lines or dots that's been drawn. I just add it close by so that it's clear to see that that reference point is labeled A, B, C, D, F, or whatever you need. Good, so now I have the next step to complete, and that is to halve the line between A and F. So what I need to do is use the construction principle of how to halve a line. Now this is covered in my grade 8 and 9 tutorials, which you can also find on my YouTube channel Fritz Rokita. And I want to use that principle and apply it now to this step that I want to do. So I want to halve line AF. In order to do that, I'm going to use my circle tool, or on paper you will use your compass. Make sure it's on the right layer, on the constructions layer, and I'm going to zoom into the center of point A, grab it, and then randomly, it doesn't have to be defined, but I'm more or less estimating roughly 3/4 of the length of line AF, and I'm going to then draw a nice light construction arc. Now I can see here on TurboCAD it's currently on 38.2, so I'm going to press tab and just make it 40 because it will still not be further than AF's length. So I'm going to make it 40 on here and press enter. Now I've got a nice big construction circle. Next is to move into point F, and if you understand and know how to halve a line, you would know you do exactly the same that you did from point A, now from F, and because you used the distance of 40 from A towards F, you will now use the distance of 40 from F towards A. Therefore, I'm going to press tab on my keyboard and I'm going to press in 40 and enter. Now I have two big arcs or circles, but it clutters my paper. So therefore we're going to do some housekeeping again. I'm going to go to the split entity tools, click on the circle that I want to edit once, and then here where the intersection of the two circles are, I just want to go a little bit away from it to show that it's still a construction. I don't stop right at the intersection. Click on the line once, and then I'm going to go to the bottom as well, because at the bottom I also need to show the intersection, and click there. Now I've got the two crosses that show where that circle will be cut off. I use my selector tool, click on the part of the circle that I want to delete, and press delete on my keyboard. Next, I will again select the split entity tool, click on the circle that I want to work with, click a little bit away from the intersection on both sides, and select the selector tool, select the part of the circle that I want to delete, and there we have it. Now I have an intersection here and an intersection here at the bottom. So what I do is I go and grab another dot to indicate that reference point where the two lines intersect with, or arcs intersect with one another. Go and grab another dot. Move back into the intersection there. Please note I make sure that it snaps properly at the center of those. So there I've got two intersections. And now the next step is to complete the halving of line AF, and the way to do that is to go now to our line option tool, make sure it's on the constructions layer, zoom into the intersection at the top, drag all the way down and snap to the intersection at the bottom. But now the line stops right there, and that's what we don't want. We want to show that it's a construction. Therefore, I'm going to go here where I got the split entity tool. I'm going to also use now the line length tool. So if I hover over that icon, you will see it's a line length tool. With that selected, I'm going to zoom in, extend that line a little bit here to the top just to show once again that it's a construction. Zoom out, zoom back in to the bottom. And now, as part of my construction for the ellipse, I have to drag this line now all the way down till it crosses beyond the y-axis of my ellipse, and therefore I'm going to click just beyond that. Now that's a long line that's diagonal that forms part of the construction for my ellipse. Once again, I'm going to go and select the selector tool, grab a dot, click on the yellow dot to get a hold of it, and then where it intersects here with the y-axis, I'm going to just place the dot there to get a reference point. Now what I have is to see which label should I call it. Well, I only labeled the defined points that I'm going to use as part of the steps for completing my ellipse. Therefore, I am not going to label these two dots over here that I used to determine this half of line AF, but I want to have this bottom here, or dot at the bottom, and I want to define it now as G, because that's the next letter that I need for my construction, and I'm going to place G here at the bottom. Now we have come a long way, and we see that our ellipse has had quite a few constructions up to this point. Now you can do all of these constructions that you've just done on the left side of your ellipse and replicate that on the right. Or you can use now the shortcut methods to carry over certain defined points and bring them over to the right hand side. So we are going to do the shorter method, which is to just use a shortcut method to carry over defined points onto the right side of the ellipse. Good, because as I said, the ellipse is a symmetrical shape. Now to do that, I must also realize that this diagonal line here has crossed the x-axis, which is from A to C, right here on this intersection there. So I know that I have to go and grab a dot. I'm running out of dots here, so I'm going to grab a dot and place it right there on that intersection where it snaps. Okay, so now I also want to label that one, and I'm going to label it H. Grab H and I label point H. That defines that point here. Let's put H there. Now I have all the constructions I need and all the reference points that I need to carry over the shortcut method to the rest of my ellipse. To do that, I'm going to first go back to my circle tool, make sure it's on the constructions layer, move to the center of my circle with my compass, click on the center, and then drag it all the way to H, where H is intersecting with my x-axis. and I draw that big arc all the way to the right hand side. So now what I've just done is all these constructions that we used to half line AF and get all those lines, I have done that to determine now the distance from H to from A to H or from O to H on the x-axis, and now I'm going to just go and place that distance here on the right. So I've saved time by just drawing that distance across over to the right hand side. Good, so what I want to do is once again use my selector tool and then grab the dot, go and place it now on the x-axis on the right. Make sure it's snapped properly, and then I need to label it. Now my next label is J. Now you will notice I did not use I. I personally do not like using I because I can many times be confused easily with L, and therefore I use J. I skip I, especially if it's a capital letter I. It's not so easy to define between I and L when it's on the same drawing. Good, so I've got point J here, which is in fact actually a duplicate of H just to the right hand side of my ellipse. In other words, a mirror of H. But now again, there's now this big circle. I don't need all of that on my drawing. So what I'm going to do is go back to this line length tool, click and hold on it, and then I have the option to go and select my split entity tool. Now I think you have realized that the line length tool is used for straight lines, and the split entity tool is what we use for arcs and circles. So I'm going to select the split entity tool, click on the circle that I want to edit, and then just go a little bit behind the x-axis on that side and on that side, and then use my selector, select the part that I want to delete, and press delete on my keyboard. Or you will erase that with your eraser on paper. Now on paper you most likely would not even draw the full circle. You would know later on through practice that you only have to draw this section of the arc as shown here. Good, so what we need to do now is to take point G and mirror point G now from the bottom to the top on the y-axis. And to do that is to use our compass or circle tool in TurboCAD, move to the center point of our ellipse, click it, drag it all the way to G's intersection of the y-axis and the diagonal line, click on it, and now we have duplicated point G, which is at the bottom, all the way to the top, and you will see it is now above point E. Now depending on the size of your ellipse, this can either be above E, it can even be on E or below E. That can happen depending on the size of your X and Y axis that you use for your ellipse. Good, so for now we have just now swung G all the way up to the top on the y-axis. Now again, we don't need all of this, so I'm going to go and use the split entity tool again. I want to still show the construction, therefore I'm just going to go and cut off the arc a little bit on that side and at the bottom there. Use my selector tool, click on the part of the circle or arc that I want to delete, and press delete on the keyboard. Good, and this is what we have at this stage. Quite a bit of constructions on this drawing, but it's a nice drawing, it's a lot of fun, and once you know it, you will see it is really an amazing drawing to construct. Good, so now what I have done is taken G and swung it all the way to the top. So we need another dot for it, so I've run out of dots. So there's several ways. I have one more dot here, but I don't want to take that one. I'm just going to go and copy it and paste it immediately and grab that yellow dot and go and place it right on that intersection there. Now once again, as a good draftsman will do, we will label. And I hope you have noticed that I like to label as soon as possible after I've placed a dot. That's just good practice as a draftsman. So I'm going to go and grab K because that's our next number in the sequence. and I'm going to place K right at the top. So K is the mirror of G on our y-axis. Good, so what I want to do next is move on to one of the final steps. We're almost there. Now you will see that this diagonal line that is going through line AF and through H all the way to G has a specific angle. So I'm going to go now and draw that same line now using my line tool, making sure that it's on the constructions layer, zoom into G, and you will notice that G and H, that's the line that we had on that angle. Now that would be then the mirror of it from G to J. And I'm going to just snap to the center of point J. And then obviously it still needs to be lengthened. So I'm going to go to the split entity tool, click and hold on it. Then I'm going to select the line length tool because this is now a straight line that we want to lengthen, and lengthen it significantly. And I just realized that I must also lengthen this line on this left significantly. Do so, and because it's a construction, I'm going to just lengthen it a little bit there as well. Good, now we have a V formed by the two construction lines. The next step is to now just do a mirror of that, and where we did it from G through H and from G through J, we're going to do exactly the same, choosing the line length tool, making sure it's on the constructions layer. I'm going to go to K, which is the mirror of G just at the top, and it must go right through H here at the bottom. I'm going to use my line length tool, and I want to lengthen this line now significantly all the way to down there, more or less. And if I did it from K through H, I think you realize now that I must also do it from K and draw a light construction line now right through J. Please make sure that it's through J and not another label. Use the line length tool and lengthen that line significantly like that. Good. Now that we have that, we see that we have a construction line that is coming from K through H and a construction line coming from K through J. Good. That's all the constructions that we need to do. Now we can finally draw the last bits of the final outlines of our ellipse. And to do that, we have to be quite witty and concentrate very closely on where we are going to draw and what we are going to draw, because outlines must always be drawn solid, and solid lines on CAD in this example of ours will be drawn with a 0.5 thickness. All the construction lines that we've just been doing is light lines because all constructions are done with light lines. We want to now draw the outlines, which will be our final answer. Now to do that, on paper, you might want to go and draw the outline of your ellipse light first, but on CAD we can easily erase and do not have any smudges on our paper. But if you were to draw dark solid lines now on your paper, you will find that you can sometimes have to erase certain bits of your arcs, and that could cause smudges. But on CAD we don't have that problem. So I'm going to go to my circle tool, and now I'm going to select my answers layer because that's my outline. The answers layer is over here, and we know that we've predefined it to be 0 millimeters, but now you see there are nothing like that what we've predefined. So what we need to do is click on the drop down, go by layer, and then it will create it as a black layer, or you can just select black, whichever you prefer. Here on the far right, you can either use the 0.5 or say by layer, and it will be drawn by layer as you've set it up. I'm just going to select 0.5 for what it's worth. Good. Now comes the bit where you have to pay close attention. Okay, so right at the bottom, we are going to place our compass at G, at the intersection there. Grab our compass and move it all the way up to B. because B is the uppermost distance of our ellipse, and therefore we're going to use that radius now from, let's see again, from G to B, and that will give us the uppermost part of our ellipse. And I click and release. Now I've got a huge circle and I don't want all of that. Now what we need to do is use our split entity tool once again, select that big circle that we've just drawn, and here is the purpose for this diagonal line. We're going to stop or cut off the top part of our ellipse there at the top on that diagonal line, as well as on that diagonal line there. Immediately I use my selector tool, select the part of the arc that I don't want, and press delete. So that is the arc which will form the uppermost part of my ellipse. Now if I've done that now from G to B, I will select my circle tool again, make sure it's on the answers layers and that all the other properties are correct. And K is the mirror of G, so we're going to go place our compass at K's intersection, and then move it all the way down now to D, because that will be the lowest point of our ellipse. So I'm going to click on there, and now we have that same big radius and arc, and we want to now do housekeeping. I'm going to select my split entity tool, click on the line, click on that diagonal line and that one, and then select tool, select the arc that I want to delete, and now we have the uppermost and the lowest arc of our ellipse. Good. And to finish now the last bit of our ellipse, we're going to select our circle tool again. Now point H and point J, now wonderfully enough, has been the center point that we need to do the last edge of our ellipse. So H, I'm going to select that and place my compass obviously on paper on H, stretch it to A and click. And on paper you will draw, and you will see even if I zoom in very closely, it works out perfectly. Now on paper it does happen that your compass sometimes slip or that your instruments moved and it's not, as accurate as it is here on CAD. But you will see that that now gives us a perfectly natural transformation from the big to the small arc of our ellipse. But we don't want this inner part of the ellipse, so I'm going to go to my split entity tool, select that ellipse, and now I will just go to here where the two of them meet, select that once, go down to the bottom to where these two lines meet, click that once, use my selector tool on the left, click on the circle and delete. There we go. Now we have the left part of our ellipse. Now I go to the right hand side where J is the center of the ellipse on the right hand side, and I'm going to zoom in properly, make sure it snaps to the center, zoom out a little bit, zoom in properly to the center of point C, place my circle, and if I zoom in you can see I worked quite accurately and it is meeting perfectly. Therefore I can now go use my split entity tool once more, select the circle, snap to the diagonal line there where they meet at the bottom as well, and use my selector tool, click on the circle, delete it, and there we go. And that concludes the construction of our ellipse. Now, like I've said before, on paper, it might be that your lines do not meet accurately, especially here by the meeting point at the diagonal line at the top and bottom. But practice makes perfect, and I encourage you to keep on trying till you get this right. My advice would be take a piece of paper, take your instruments, mount your paper to your board, draw your X and Y axis, determine the length of the X axis and the height of your Y axis, select your point 0 or O, and from there what you will do is start with the construction step by step and watch this tutorial or other tutorials on YouTube. And if you make a mistake, take that paper off the board, throw it in the bin, start from scratch once you've watched the video once more, and keep on doing that till you can do the whole construction without making a mistake. And before you know it, you'll be able to do this drawing with no trouble whatsoever. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. I hope you had a good lesson and have a good day.